Hi, my name is John Rubello, and this is the Bullion Vault. Hi, Willem, how you doing?
Well in yourself, Dion.
Very good. So it's episode 28, and we've gone on for a good portion of this year. We started it towards the end of last year, and we literally now past halfway of this year, and we're now heading towards the final part of this year. Literally, I believe that the next few blinks of my eyes, and we'll be looking at December, and then Happy New Year 2026.
It's always the way it goes, isn't it?
What's interesting is I was looking at the Gold Council's mid-year report, and of course, gold has had an unprecedented run. It is the top performing asset globally, hands down, by actually quite a large margin. And it's outperformed all the stocks, bonds, everything, hands down. So it's quite interesting that gold, where it's sitting right now, it's sitting at around 3,000, just over 300, 3,300, and it's been quite stable, a lot of lateral movement, but we know what's coming with that also.
Yeah, I think it's been sort of hovering around 3,300, dipping a low below, going up to 3,400 for 3 or 4 months now.
Yeah.
It's just been sitting there. It's very stable. But we've been looking at gold this year a lot. We've been checking on the gold and going, wow, look at gold. But while we've been doing that, we've seen platinum sort of just sneak in under the radar. And then of course, we've seen silver over
Yes.
the last month or so just absolutely taking off.
And I think the basis of today's discussion is going to be about silver. We have spoken at considerable length about it, but I think just touching on the platinum thing quickly. I mean, $3,400 an ounce. I mean,
1,400.
my apologies, $1,400 an ounce. I mean, you look where it was at the beginning of this year. It was under $1,000. It was really battling. 2024 was quite a tough year for platinum, for the industry, for the sector at large. And that translates right to the mining, right down onto the ground, that platinum has really battled. And then suddenly this year, there's just been that trip up, and we can see it's gained some nice momentum. It's looking very strong.
Yeah, well, there's two things, of course. Firstly, with gold being $3,400 an ounce, some people are turning to platinum jewelry, and that, of course, is giving it a boost. There's also a renewed or an increase in the use of platinum in industrial applications, as they always, as we know, it's an industrial metal. It's used in various industrial applications. But I think with the advent of greener technologies, greener energy, EV cars, and the like, platinum's really getting a boost. There's a bigger demand, and of course, along with that comes a increase in demand for investment. With, as I said, the jewelry sector turning to platinum because, funnily enough, it's the cheaper metal now. We were, what was it, about 20 years ago or so, platinum was double gold's price. So platinum was the really high end, top end jewelry, and now they're turning to it simply because it's cheaper than gold.
Well, it's quite funny you say that. I mean, even from a marketing perspective, gold was good, but platinum was prestigious. It was like the top level, even in different industries where, they almost, give you a crediting, like a gold status, a silver status, but a platinum status was the premier status.
It's funny, yes. I was just thinking about, you get your silver card at the bank and you get your gold card at the bank, but ooh, if you've got the platinum, then you know you've really made it.
Yeah, well, then of course you get the black card, but that's banking for you. But again, it's interesting that from a trend perspective, it's shifted, and as you're saying, it makes a lot of sense. Even what's interesting is palladium is actually up also. I mean, it's over at $1,200 an ounce, and the nice thing there is that platinum is still competing with palladium for to a degree in the autocat sector. But I think and you've mentioned it from an industrial perspective, where it's really growing some legs, and we've spoken about this before, is the hydrogen power translating into the EV sector and the electric sector and electrifying the world and removing your traditional fossil fuels.
Yeah, and also touching on the AutoCAD sector, I mean, I think I mentioned this a while ago when we were talking about platinum. Palladium has a lower melting point than platinum,
Yeah.
and as we know, diesel engines burn a lot hotter than your petrol engines, which makes palladium not the best material to use in these AutoCADs, and therefore they are using a lot more platinum in those AutoCADs. And as we're seeing the electronic vehicle market pick up, we're seeing a decrease in fossil fuel cars, and so most of the metals used in AutoCADs is being used for diesel engines, your trucks, etc., etc. So I think that's also giving platinum a bit of a boost. Palladium is sort of decreasing in demand on the AutoCAD sector, while platinum is increasing just proportionally because it's more utilized in the diesel engines.
And you're right. I mean, you look 20, 30 years ago, diesel technology, especially your turbo diesel technology, was mainly for trucks and those kind of things. Whereas vehicles, to have a turbo diesel vehicle, a 1100 turbo diesel, or 1200 or 1300 turbo diesel, it's efficient as far as fuel economy, all those kind of things. So you're 100% right that the technology is also driving that demand on the platinum side.
And I mean, if you look at diesel vehicles these days, it's come so far. I remember, yes, when I was a light year, 5, 6 years old, my dad had a little red Golf diesel that he borrowed from a friend because he was commuting long trips to go and work with that said friend. And I remember that thing sounded like a tractor when you started it up. Nowadays, you won't know just listening to a car, whether it's a diesel or petrol engine. So that's how far that technology has come. Diesel engines are much more viable
They're
now.
reliable.
They're reliable in passenger cars as well as in long haul and freight vehicles.
Yeah. And again, as you say, I think it's definitely also driving that from the AutoCAD side, which makes sense. And as we've always said, and we've said this, that whole drive to electrify vehicles, the EV sector, is only going to get bigger. We know that with the agreements on an environmental across Europe and stuff, there are timelines that they're running towards. I mean, America was part of that, but we know that Trump is not very big on the environmental causes or sticking to a lot of those agreements. In fact, I don't even think they're part of those agreements right now.
Yeah, I think they have withdrawn from which is the big one, the Paris Climate Accord or
Yeah.
something. But yeah, but looking at Europe, there is, I think it's 2035,
Yeah.
where they're going to say that's it. No more internal combustion engine vehicles may be sold.
Yeah.
And that, of course, means it's all going to be electric, it's all going to be hydrogen. And we've still got Japan, who's making a big push towards the hydrogen economy. We've spoken about this before. This massive green drive that's taking place across the world, and Japan is still hedging their bets on hydrogen.
And I'm a big fan of it myself. I think we've spoken also at length on this whole move away from fossil fuels and the move into the electric side of things. And again, you look at traditional power units being batteries. We've spoken on trucks, the viability, your power to weight ratio. In other words, the amount of batteries that would power electric truck versus its actual payload becomes uneconomical. Whereas hydrogen, as far as a power pack hydrogen, which goes from gas and uses platinum as the translator from gas into electricity, is far, far more economical. Your recharge times are better, and so on. And I think that's where hydrogen still has an edge on batteries or traditional batteries. That recharge times have improved a hell of a lot, but you're still dealing with the weight issue. You're still dealing with a whole number of issues that surround batteries.
Yeah, obviously, there's a lot of work and a lot of research and development going into EV batteries at the moment. Um, I mean, once China got hold of it, they just absolutely ran with it. They started building up new factories, cars, um, and their car market at the moment is absolutely exploding, especially in the EV sector.
And yes, I mean, we see what's happening in the States. We see with the whole Donald Trump and tariffs, and we've seen how that's affected the world and us as South Africans. But you raised something very clear. The one country that's benefited or put a lot of time and effort into investing in their local economy has been China, and it's paying dividends. I mean, we always talk about that years ago. If you saw Korean cars, the first Kias and those cars, they were not great. They looked terrible. but they started to build upon their brands, and and suddenly they market leaders. And I remember we had this discussion towards, I think it was mid last year, where we were talking about the new wave of Chinese vehicles coming. And I think a lot of your traditional European brands, your BMWs, your Mercedes, and so on, they all like, oh no, please, the Chinese, the quality won't be there. Now suddenly people are choosing, they can get the same warranties, they can get the same bells and whistles, but for literally a fraction of the price.
No, it is quite frightening how quickly the Chinese vehicles have picked up. I mean, I think it was about 10 years ago I watched a Top Gear episode where old Clarkson and May went to China to go and look at these Chinese cars because they heard in 5 years we're all going to be driving Chinese cars. And they were looking at the Chinese cars and they were pretty rubbish.
Yeah.
They were quite awful.
Well, the cherries of this world, if people remember those little sedans, I mean that
The
those were
QQ.
proper, yes, they were proper Chinese cars.
And that's the thing. You look at the cherries of today, and it's a phenomenal car.
It's impressive. If you, and I know we've also discussed this, is that, what was a really super entry level car, which minimums features, now suddenly they're coming in with entry level to mid level to top range luxury options across the board. And from a technology perspective, safety perspective, reliability, and all that, they're coming to the party.
Yeah, I think the point I was trying to make before we got into all of this is basically that, um, if we look at hydrogen, we've got Japan that's sort of trying to boost the hydrogen. They're trying to get this hydrogen economy going, like the spark, if we can say that, which is not a good idea around
With hydrogen.
hydrogen. But anyway, but yeah, Japan is lighting that spark, and it's only a matter of time before, a China or I don't know who, maybe India. I don't know. We don't know where it's going to be in 10 years. But it's only a matter of time before somebody picks up on that technology and starts driving it, like the Chinese did with the electric vehicles. And once that happens, platinum is going to be absolutely vital.
Yeah, and again, just to refresh that Japan declared themselves to be the first hydrogen economy, and that goes from buses to boats to cars across the board, where they're looking to utilize hydrogen to power their economy. And that technology, as you say, is being really driven by them. And it just needs an Elon Musk in that sense, where he took Tesla, which was not sexy, and suddenly it became the biggest motor company in the world just through good marketing, good vehicles, and suddenly EVs were the cool thing. And that subsequently affected the rest of the market, and the rest of the market benefited from that. But I still, and I will say this now, that I still think that hydrogen is the better long-term play when it comes to reliability and all of the things that we've spoken about.
Definitely. I mean, if you look at the amount of rare earth metals that need to be mined, refined, processed, built into a battery to go into an EV, I'm not going to say it's very environmentally friendly, to be honest. I mean, how long do you have to drive that electric vehicle to make up for all of that carbon and all of those emissions spent to get that car on the road? Which, I mean, obviously, it's a debate that's been raging for ages. Um, but yeah, I think hydrogen, on the other hand, is a lot cleaner from in that sense, from the ground up to actually getting it on the road. I think hydrogen is just the cleaner fuel.
Yeah, and sure, there are, in hydrogen, on the actual harvesting of hydrogen, there's categories from pink and green and all the way to black, and generally that's where they literally are utilizing oil, and byproducts of it then become hydrogen and so on. But again, it's technology that, if it is done correctly, over time will become more efficient. And let's be honest, we got lots of hydrogen.
Well, it's the most abundant element in the universe. So yeah, there's plenty of it. Um, but yeah, I think, as you said, there are different levels of harvesting the hydrogen, and what it boils down to is there are clean ways of harvesting it.
Yeah. And again, so I think we both in the same position there, that we big fans of hydrogen as an alternative fuel source to EVs, and also to fossil fuels. But let's go straight into it. And I think, we've seen silver and we've spoken, we big fans of silver. For me personally, it's a really great commodity or bullion product as an entry level. So someone that can't afford to spend an ounce of gold at $3,300 an ounce, you know, an ounce of silver roughly right now is around 30, just over $37 an ounce. I think it's just short of
Just short of
38.
38, yeah. And I mean, as you rightly said, it's a lot easier to buy an ounce of silver than it is to buy an ounce of gold, yet it still holds that same value across the world. We talk often about hedging your money, or hedging your money out of fiat currencies, and silver serves the same purpose. Yes, in the past we've seen the price go up and down like a little erratic
ADHD child,
a
as we used
mosquito
to.
on Red
Yes.
Bull or something like that. But if we're looking at it, what it's done this so far this year, it's actually been quite stable. And as you said, we're sitting on $38 an ounce now. And yeah, so let's have a chat about silver. Let's take a look at where silver comes from. And I mean, we often speak about gold that's been used as a currency for millennia, and same thing with silver. I mean, that some of the earliest examples come from 4000 BC in Greece. We see some other artifacts from Samaria in 3000 BCE. And if you look at history, the word silver and money is the same word in about 14 languages. I mean, if you look at French, we've got, and I'm going to butcher some languages here, so please forgive me. We've got argent, which means money, and silver. In Irish, we've got, how do I pronounce this? Araget, I think. As I said, I'm butchering a few languages, which in modern day English means money, but it used to mean silver. So there's this connotation of silver and money that's been coming for as long as humanity has been trading.
Well, even if you look at the pound sterling, which is a direct reference to silver.
And I mean, even in the US, if you look at some of their money, up until 1964, their nickels, their dimes, their dimes, quarters, half dollars, and dollars were made of 90% silver. So if you find something, silver dollar or something from before 1964, you're in the money there.
Well, even our own currencies. I mean, the old big 1 rand coins, which were also predating a certain period, were predominantly silver. In fact, they had an ounce of silver in them.
And even if you look back to Roman times, that's where the original gold silver ratio of 12 to 1 comes from,
Yes.
because 12 silver coins was one gold coin. And yeah, that's the lowest it's ever been. We've seen it shoot up to over 100 now, and it's coming down. And as we said, it's not going to be because gold is suddenly going to drop out of the equation. And I mean, we're probably going to talk a little bit more about this, but yeah. So if we look at it, the symbol, of course, is AG, which stands for argentum, which is Latin for silver. And then if we just take a little bit of a dive, scarcity 0.05 parts per million of the Earth's crust is composed of silver. So it's obviously quite rare. Mining wise, I think it's about 25% of the world's silver supply comes from mining primarily for silver, because it's found a lot in combinations with other metals like
Yeah.
lead, zinc,
Gold,
gold, and
platinum,
copper.
yeah, a lot. Yeah.
A lot of them you find the silver. So a lot of, or the majority of silver actually comes as byproduct from other mining activities,
Yeah.
and that obviously is one of the reasons why it is so much cheaper than gold, because to mine an ounce of gold versus to mine an ounce of silver is a massive discrepancy in the price of that. And then, of course, we've spoken about the properties of silver for eons. It's the most reflective metal. It reflects 95% of all visible light, which means it's used in mirrors, it's used in telescopes. Um, It's an excellent conductor of electricity. In fact, it's the best conductor of electricity. So they use it in contact switches, they use it in circuits, and any other applications where energy efficiency is absolutely crucial. And then, of course, it's also got antimicrobial properties. So it's used in wound dressings, it's used in water purification, textiles, all sorts of things. And all of this, it just makes it one of the most useful elements on the planet.
Yeah, you talk about that, and what's interesting is second to oil, it is the most used commodity on earth, and you've given such a range of things, and there's more. I mean, we talk about photovoltaic panels, your solar panels, which is currently, and we've spoken also at length about this. I mean, that has been running consistently over the last 3 years at 20% per annum in its growth rate. And the two biggest sectors or in countries that are utilizing them, and we see it even in our own country, but we see globally. But both India and China are buying up solar panels like there's no tomorrow at those levels.
Definitely, and it's all part of the this green energy drive, the green economy as we call it, which you know dwarfs just about anything else that's currently prevalent on the planet. If you look at the research into AI, we think, oh, so many billions is being spent. However, the green economy is worth trillions. It absolutely makes the money spent on AI, on the Internet of Things, of all these things that we're always thinking about and hearing about and being told this is the future, this is the future. It's being dwarfed by the green economy and this drive towards greener energy.
And you say that, and what's quite interesting is we know that the world, and I always have to be tread very carefully here, because you get some people that believe in climate change and others don't. I believe there's a cyclical part of it. So we've been through ice ages and we go through things where the world does change naturally. Have we as humanity accelerated the increase in greenhouse gases and warmed up the planet? I do believe we have. There are people that will outright say it's a load of fake news, and you know where that comes from. But the truth is that without a doubt, we as humanity, and through our brilliance as humans, how we've been able to create things, we've also had an effect on our environment. And that has changed the dynamics of ice melting throughout the world, through the your polar caps, and so on. So we have had that effect, and it has been down to how we've utilized our growth in industrial applications, where we've used all these different things. And as we've got more and more through the different decades and through the different centuries, we started to realize we need to become more efficient, that those form of energy are not necessarily as efficient as they can be, where we got something that's shining at us literally for at any given time on the world at least 12 hours. One part of the world is in full sunlight. Why should we not be harvesting that power?
It's quite hilarious to think about it. How old is humanity now, and we're still primarily a fire-based civilization.
Exactly.
We get our energy from burning something, and it's quite hilarious to me to actually think about that. Um, but yeah, no, it's definitely there are better ways of doing it, and obviously precious metals are going to play a big role in it. The green economy is coming. You know,
Well, it's already here.
one day the oil is going to run out.
Well, again, we harvesting things, as you say, that are finite. The great thing with the likes of silver, and like with a lot of your metals, is they are recyclable. So once it's been used, it doesn't mean it's finished. They can actually reutilize it and actually refurbish it into a new thing and create new products from it.
Definitely. And see, now here's the thing. We are able to reuse these metals, and we're mining new metals, but it's still not enough to satisfy the demand. If we look at the demand over the past 7 years,
And this is on silver specific.
so yeah, this applies to silver specifically. And I mean, if we look at 2020, which was the biggest one so far, we seen 286 million ounces in deficit. And so far in 2025, we're seeing projected 187.6 million ounces. Now, of course, there's an excellent video by Mike Maloney on this. We are great fans of the man.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And yeah, if we remember, we'll add the link to the video in the description so you guys can go and watch it as well. But basically, what he says is what's going to put this deficit back into balance, and basically, it's price. You know, as the price goes up. Now here's the other side of it. As the price goes up, investors are going to be more interested and they're going to demand more, which leads him to project that the real number for 2025 might actually be closer to 300 million ounces in deficit.
Sure. And how would that then translate to price projections?
Well, this is the thing now, we've reached that $38. Now, I think it was 14 years ago
Yeah.
since it's been at that level. And what this might do is we're now looking at the next price point, which is $48, which I think is pretty close to the historic high for silver.
Yeah, which is just it's around $50 an ounce. Yeah.
Yeah, this is, but this was back in 1980,
Yes.
which to today, if we take inflation and everything into account and we pitch it against other indicators like the housing index, etc., etc., silver should theoretically be sitting at about $200 an ounce.
Yeah, and again, it's interesting we speak about that whole big spike in the 80s, that was artificially pushed by the Hunt brothers, where they decided to actually spike the price on silver, and they did. It shot to those high levels, but of course there was a quite a sharp pullback, and through the latter period, silver's been very lateral. It's gone up a little bit, it's come down, and as we've spoken trend wise. Silver was very erratic. It would shoot up, and then it would drop probably 10 to 20% per time, if not even more. But as you mentioned earlier, and this was the interesting thing, is from about the beginning of last year, we started to see a stabilization of the price. So there'd be these slight incremental increases, but the actual dips became less. And we saw the movement. It's really solidified itself in the high teens, and then it went into the 20s and so on, and suddenly then broke into that 30, and now it's gone to the high end of 30, and that's just over the period now within the last 6 months that it really has had that upward swing. But we could see from its trend perspective that it was building this momentum. The return, those drops, those profit taking points were not as great drops, and that's where we see with gold right now. Is that's why we still very positive. I mean, you look at gold, and you know that there was a little bit of profit taking. There's quite a bit of lateral movement, but there's no indication right now that gold is going to be dropping. The general consensus in the markets and in the general political and economic climate is gold will go up. And that same thing then applies to silver.
Definitely. I mean, as they're saying, we often speak of the cup and handle formation, which is the sort of drop which forms the cup, and then you've got the handle, and as soon as it starts increasing from that handle is where you usually see the breakout. And silver is already in motion there.
Yeah.
We're talking about 38 now. As Mike Maloney said, once we reach 48 to $50 range, that's where we're starting to enter unprecedented territory, because what's going to happen once it crosses $50? Now, that's a big psychological barrier. Um, Nobody knows, because historically, it hasn't really done that. It hasn't broken out of that range previously. So we don't know what's going to happen once that does that. Obviously, once it hits that $50, there's a lot of people who are going to say, right, that's my time to cash in. So that's where we're going to see the drop. But what happens after that?
And again, you talk about the supply of it. You see the need for it. So it's not a commodity that's going to literally just fade into existence. You know that there is a definite need for it. As we mentioned, I mentioned it earlier, that second to oil, it is the most used commodity on earth.
Definitely. I mean, and I think this is also the thing that might be driving or might be stabilizing the price at the moment is, we're seeing a lot more silver being used in all of the new green energy technologies and applications. And because it is being used a lot more as an industrial metal, the demand for it as an industrial metal keeps growing. And, you know, where there's a demand that's linked to the actual economy instead of just investment or jewelry or something like that, but when it's actually starting to feed into the actual economy.
Literally drive the economies. Yeah.
Yeah, that so I think that might be playing towards the price of silver actually stabilizing at the moment. And if we look at, I think it was in the 1970s, or what was it, in the 1980s, where we had that silver boom.
Yeah.
um
81
yeah,
to be specific. Yeah.
the price of silver went up 700% in the matter of a year or so. And I think it was 6 months or it was the last 60 days of the year was where the majority of that happened. And if we take that into consideration, you know, 700% could put us into that $200, $300 an ounce territory.
Also, we got to take this into consideration, and we saw this when the Wall Street Reddit groups got involved, and I'd said it then, where traditionally your bullion or your commodities like gold, silver, and platinum is the actual market for that, or the population group that generally goes, we're buying into those, where people of probably 35 and above, if not even a little bit older. Suddenly you had the Reddit and Wall Street bets groups actually wanting to do like they did in 1981 with the Hunt brothers, where they wanted to push the price of silver up. It introduced a whole new generation to silver, into bullion. And that for me is probably one of the most exciting things. And I said it then, that as soon as you start to get a whole new generation coming into understanding precious metals, it's going to create a greater demand.
Not just that, I mean, we back to the Kindleberger Minsky model of booms and busts
Absolutely, and
now.
I was thinking that when you were saying your bit, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's basically, as we said, that it consists of 4 phases or 5 phases. The first is the stealth phase, where nobody knows about. You've got your early adopters, your early investors, your angel investors, who's putting money into something that nobody knows, that doesn't seem like it's worth anything to anybody, like Bitcoin when it was 5 cents a Bitcoin. Um, then you've got the awareness phase, which is where your institutional investors come in. They start pumping the money in, and we've been seeing that for quite a while now. We've seen. I mean, what's his name? Old the investor.
Warren Buffett.
Warren Buffett, that's him. I can't believe I forgot him. Anyway, he's invested over $1 billion in silver. And we've seen this around the world. Investment houses, your institutional investors are buying up silver. So that's the awareness phase. Then we hit the mania phase, where everybody sees this and it's on everybody's lips and it's in front of everybody's eyes, like we saw with Bitcoin. Um, you Everybody sees the price rise day after day after day. They see how it's climbing and they're thinking, "Oh wow, I need to get in on this now." Usually by that time it's a bit late. But what it does is it fuels the need, it fuels the demand, and that in turn just drives the price up, skyrockets it towards unprecedented highs. And then, of course, you hit the bust,
Yeah.
which is where that bubble bursts, and a lot of people generally tend to lose a lot of money. Now, precious metals, I mean, yes, you have your ups and downs, but eventually you'll get back to where you were.
Well, if we and again, if we look at the case for gold over the last 50 plus years, in relation to currencies and to inflation, it has gone lateral and upward throughout that whole movement. Its trend line has shown growth. In other words, what an ounce of gold cost you 50 years ago to what it costs you now, versus what $100 would have bought you 50 years, what it will buy you now, and or when you go to the shops, what a loaf of bread would have cost you 50 years ago to what it costs you now.
Yeah, and that's why we're always saying diversify, get your money out of fiat currencies. It doesn't matter if it's US dollars, South African rands, the naira, the Argentinian peso, and all terrible examples at the moment. Um, but there's always this drop in monetary value or the value of that money. There's always this drop in the value of the fiat currency, and it's been there throughout history. It's inflation. It happens. It's just the way it works. However, gold is the hedge against that. It protects you against inflation. It protects you against an actual sudden devaluation of the money, like we saw with the naira, like we saw with the Argentinian peso, and like we will most likely one day see in both the South African rand and the US dollar.
Will they even be around is the question.
That's a good question. I mean, the average lifespan of a fiat currency is, I think, 21 years.
27 years, yeah.
27 years.
The interesting thing there is we know that with gold, we know its performance. We know that with currencies, especially the dollar, is under a lot of pressure. We look at with the rise of Trump into the presidency, how he's trying to rebuff the dollar, rebuff the American economy to do things. We've spoken at length also about this, how he's created all these tariff increases to try force stimulate growth within the American economy. But again, we've spoken also about that, where it's not going to happen overnight. You can't just go and create industries that have been dormant or stagnant for decades and suddenly start to believe that they will. But also then the knock-on effect that those tariffs and we as a country are directly affected by it right now, where our government and we had that big show of power at the Oval Office, and since then it's kind of like fizzled and it's kind of gone into nothing. And the response back to the US is, well, we're going to give you 30% on tariff increases. We spoke about that last week, the effect of that on exports. And that affects not just the companies that make the vehicles, it's all the supporting industry around that. It's all the people and families that are paid through those industries and sectors that will then have that knock-on effect to our economy.
Definitely. I mean, it's putting let's just take a very simple example. Putting a 50% tariff on aluminium.
Aluminum.
Aluminum. That's a brand name, or it used to be a brand name. Anyway,
Well, it's the same thing if you ask for a shopping bag, you say, "Can I have a Checkers bag?" Or saying, I mean, it's how it goes, I guess.
oh yeah, there's a ton of those. But anyway, so yeah, just that aluminium production. We think of it as a base metal. It's the lowest in the chain, but just to get it to that point already has so many industries around it that's being affected by it. You've got the production, you've got the mining, you've got the electrical, because producing aluminium requires a heck of a lot of electricity. And that's the thing I think that people miss a lot of times. They think, oh, it's affecting the automobile sector. But no, it's affecting the shipping sector, it's affecting the mining sector, it's affecting all of those things, as you said, all of those industries surrounded by it and dependent on it.
Absolutely. So again, I mean, that's a whole topic. I was hoping that we could discuss it. I think we need to unpack that on one episode completely, where SA Inc. is with regards to the US. I know we got viewers that have very strong views on pro and against it. Again, I think it's a good topic that we will definitely look at. But I think for the sake of where we are now, the important thing here is, and this is why we're highlighting this, is again that bullion offers that vehicle of stability in a world that right now is very uncertain, both economically and geopolitically.
No, you're 100% correct there. And that is, usually the thing that we say in times of turmoil, people turn to bullion. And whether it be silver, whether it be gold, as we were talking about silver earlier, it is the easiest way. to get into the bullion market. You don't even have to buy an ounce. You can literally buy a gram if that's all you can afford. But buy enough of those grams, it all adds up, and eventually it's going to be beneficial to you in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, I look at some of our clients who did diversify across the both well, gold, silver, and platinum, and each has had their nice growth. One got to so gold was the first one to really run. Well, if we go back a couple of years, platinum was the first one to go, and I'm talking since 2020. We saw platinum had that big jump and had growth, and then of course it started to taper off, and then was the poorest performer last year. We saw then gold take over, and its growth has been unprecedented. And now we see silvers coming into it. And again, this is about that diversifying when instead of just having everything on gold or everything on platinum or everything on silver, there's nice price points on all of those products. And as you say, it's not about getting an ounce or a bar. You can actually get small denominations of it, small grams of each product. But the important thing is to look at that diversification because all of those right now are being affected and there's growth coming into all of them.
You're 100% correct, and I mean, you didn't mention platinum, which is also just on a rampage at the moment. I mean, we'll be looking at $1,400 an ounce. That is up from under 1,000 at the beginning of the year. That is massive growth.
Yeah. Well, it's literally up nearly a third on its actual pricing, and for me that speaks very well. And through the episode today, we've really touched on the big power points for platinum and really staked its claim on where it's going to go. Like I said with gold, the from the even the Gold Council's outlook is there's no consideration for any bear market within gold right now because of the current climate. I think silver and platinum, based on the industrial side, definitely lay that out that their growth will continue to go upward.
Yeah, and I mean, we say it time and again. Diversify, get your money out of fiat currencies. You might have a policy that in 10 or 15 years till 20 years time is going to pay you out 5 million rand. What is 5 million rand going to be worth then?
That's always my first question. What is 5 million rand worth? It might be worth something now, but what will that be in 10, 15 years from now? If you and we've had this case with Argentina when we did that case study, is what's the same value bought now in precious metals? What will that be in 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now?
Yeah. No, it's so yeah, I think my point stands.
Yeah, so I think again, in closing, Willem, was there any other thoughts that you wanted to maybe just discuss on silver?
Well, I think we just need to keep an eye on it. Obviously, there's still room for it to grow. I mean, this breakout that we're seeing now is 14 years in the making. Um, yeah, go watch Mike Maloney's video on it. It's really, really interesting, and he reiterates a lot of the points that we've made today. And silver is looking really good.
Yeah, and we are big fans of silver. And for a long time where we've said to clients, be patient, and people have said, yeah, but silver's not performing. And we kept saying we gave the case for silver and it's not coming good. So it's good to see that what we've spoken about since 2020 is now being translated into actual fact. And we're at such an exciting phase of silver that it's broken that 14-year high, and now there's exciting things to come in unknown territory where it's moving.
Definitely. And if you want to see where silver is going, hit the subscribe button. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like, and we'll see you guys in the next one.
Take care. Thank you. Bye.